Hi everyone, my name is Marcus and my interest is in excited conservation and carnivore behavior and the ways we can enrich the habitats of carnivores that are held captive in zoos. This is an important topic because it impacts the success of excited conservation efforts, that is, the captive breeding of endangered species. Therefore, the focus of the topic today is the importance of environmental enrichment for captive felids. So, in the 1960s, zoos began to play a major role in wildlife conservation in addition to the traditional focus on public entertainment. And this led to the birth of excited conservation in the form of captive breeding programs with the goal of increasing captive population sizes and eventually replenishing the genetic diversity of the wild populations. But successful captive breeding requires understanding the fundamental reproductive traits and basic species biology and has promoted a lot of research in these areas. After all, simply putting a male and a female together of the same species does not guarantee that they're going to mate and breed. Okay. For example, studies on captive feeders have assisted reproduction efforts by demonstrating how photoperiods and seasons are linked to the female's estrus cycle. However, the most challenging of the captive breeding successes is the stress of captivity, and a wide range of research has explored this topic. Prolonged stress can lead to serious welfare problems in captive animals. The phrase animal welfare is defined by the American Veterinary Medical Association as to how an animal is coping with the conditions in which it lives. An animal's welfare is good when it's well nourished, it's healthy, it's able to express natural behavior, it's comfortable, it's safe. The animal is not suffering from distress, pain, or fear. Defined this way, welfare is difficult to measure because it is a combination of physical, psychological, and biochemical factors. The mammalian stress response normally involves the release of stress hormones, mainly glucocorticoids like cortisol and catecholamines from the adrenal glands, as well as the suppression of hormones related to the metabolic rate, the reproduction rate, and growth rates. These endocrine changes appear as lower growth rates, reduced body weight, suppressed reproductive cycling, and increased morbidity and mortality. Stress also causes behavioral changes. Stressed out cats, for example, display sickness behavior, and this is when the animal behaves as if they're ill, but physically the animals are not ill. The next would be reduced exploratory and play behaviors, increased alertness, and less time spent sleeping. One of the most conspicuous consequences of stress of captive mammals, especially felids, is stereotypic behavior in which actions are rigidly repeated with no apparent function or goal. So stereotypies are a sure sign that the animal's welfare has been compromised. As you can see here in this video, you can see a black leopard and it's doing what's called a pacing behavior. And the pacing behavior is, as a stereotypical behavior, is different than what we would call a patrolling behavior. Patrolling behavior would be when the animal is taking different pathways in its exhibit. It's changing them, it's taking time to explore its exhibit. And that would be patrolling behavior. That's different than pacing behavior, where you see with this black leopard when he's doing the exact same thing repeatedly. So stereotypic behaviors in captive carnivores are promoted by adverse stimuli, such as being in barren enclosures, being housed with incompatible enclosure mates, or being in proximity with a competitor species. So that would be like housing a leopard and a tiger next to each other, and the cats being able to visually see each other. That can create an uncomfortable situation for both of the cats and create unnecessary stress for the cats. All right. Such stereotypies can be extremely hard to change in cats exposed to prolonged stress, and a lack of stimuli or even adverse stimuli. Once an animal is in this state, it becomes almost useless for captive breeding efforts. Therefore, it's extremely important to maintain captive conditions that preclude stereotypy, especially for endangered species, in which captive animals may be one of the few remaining individuals in the wild population. Fortunately, stereotypic behavior can be reduced through properly managed environmental enrichment. The term environmental enrichment is not used consistently in the literature, but the core concept is that the animal's physical and psychological health can be improved by providing sensory stimuli in the enclosure that induces natural engagement behavior. Zoo biologists have also shown that stress can be reduced in captive felids by exposing them to complex environmental stimuli such as feeding poles, big cat crosswalks, stuffed pumpkins, cardboard boxes, free swinging sticks. In fact, environmental enrichment for zoo felids has become an essential part of their husbandry. There are also different categories in which enrichments belong to. And so auditory can be several things, including different animal calls used in the enclosures. Feeding and foraging can refer to how food is presented. So whether food is scattered or if it's put somewhere else to make the animals work for their food, that's a form of enrichment. Olfactory refers to smell. So olfactory can be used in several different ways, including putting spices or animal feces, commercial fragrances like perfumes and colognes, or other methods can be used in that form. Tactile refers to touch. So it can be anything from different substrates in the enclosures, such as wood piles to grass, or even the different texture of a toy. That can be considered tactile. Taste is also a category, and training is also a category which can help the animals in numerous ways by promoting health and also include exercise in this category. The training is also important for certain species because it can create bonds between the animals and the keepers, which in turn can reduce the stress levels of the animals. The next can be a visual enrichment, which helps improve the animal's welfare. And an example of this would be an arrangement of rearranging the enclosures or putting different things in the enclosures. That could be considered a visual enrichment. And it can also be, some people also include enclosure design as a category, and that can also fall in between those two. That can also make a difference in how an animal responds to the enrichment they're given is the exhibit enclosure. Right. There are also strategies in how enrichment is given. And for felids, it's more beneficial if you're going to do things like combining enrichments. For example, it would be more beneficial to a tiger if you gave him a boomer ball with a scent put on it. You're creating a sensory stimuli that's a mixture of things. So the cat is getting olfactory training, which I put exercise in the category of, and it's a visual stimuli. The combining of these enrichments creates various forms of different enrichment for the cats. It also helps prevent what I call the boredom effect. And the boredom effect is when an animal receives an enrichment so often and sometimes even at the same time that the animals become bored with it. They lose interest in that object, and you want to avoid that. The next will be it encourages more natural engagement behaviors in the cats. So natural engagement behavior is the behaviors that you would naturally see the animals doing in the wild. That is a natural engagement behavior. You want to see a lot of that in enclosures. Another major reason why enrichment should be combined is to work with the animal's idiosyncrasies, which are the distinctive characteristics of that individual. These affect the behavioral responses of the cats to the enrichment. It cannot be assumed that two individuals of the same species are going to react to the enrichment in the same way. They're individuals, and You can't work with the cats in that type of way and expect the same results. The enrichment given has to match the individuality of the animals. And when enrichment is properly matched up with an individual, it helps promote the animal's welfare, and in turn, it can help improve the excited conservation efforts of that particular species. In summary, environmental enrichment is an essential part of felid husbandry, and it directly impacts efforts of excited conservation. Given the threatened and declining status of these iconic mammals, every possible enhancement of captive breeding programs we need needs to be pursued and adjusted to the animal's needs. And I know of my interest, that's a very heavy part of interest for me is enrichment, animal training, positive reinforcement, encouraging the animals to have natural engagement behaviors. Again, my name is Marcus, and I hope this helps with your understanding of the importance of environmental enrichment for captive felids. Have a good day.